G'day community, my name's Denzel and welcome to the very first proper episode of Denzel Talks. So I'm super excited to get into this series and to share with you my thoughts and opinions on various topics. So I'm going to be playing around with the setup and if you hear any noises like birds chirping or construction, that's all good. I want to create more of a natural feel. So I've left the windows open just to kind of really bring a nice natural element to this video as much as I can bring to you, even though it's through YouTube and stuff. So anyway, very excited. And today's topic, I was gonna start off with something that was a bit more casual, a bit more I guess easy in a sense, but I really wanted to talk about role identification and what roles you might be identifying with, and also why that might not be the best thing ever. Alright, cool. My dog's just jumped up onto the bed. Come on, up. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, role identification. What is that? What do I mean by that? Well, that's basically any role that your ego is identifying with, right? And this is very common, we all do it. So examples of that may be parent. You identify with being a parent in a parental role. Or if you're the CEO or high up in a company, it could be something like being an athlete. So when I say this, and the reason I say this is that it's around in so many areas of our lives, and why this isn't necessarily the best thing is because it's our ego that's identifying with this role, and the ego always wants more. It is never satisfied. That's what I personally put down to why we have so much greed in this world, is because of ego. Like, how can we have a multi-billionaire, with all these millions of dollars, and then we have all these people dying of starvation? You'd think that wealth sharing would be quite a simple solution when you can see the way these people are living, but I think it all comes back to ego and the identification with, being one of the richest people in the world and stuff, and, you've identified with this role. Anyway, I digress. So there's lots of different roles. So for me personally, it could be paced, right? So I identify when people ask me, what do you do? I say, I work at this place and I have my own business. I founded Paste. And that can be quite dangerous because once it ties in with your ego doesn't want to let go of it. So, and the way you can tell that this is, you're identifying with this role instead of just letting this role be, is that think about this role being taken away from you and how would that make you feel. So at the start, when I first came across this concept, I thought straight away to paste, and I was like, but like my business is me, like everything I'm pouring in my heart and soul into this business, how is this not me? If that makes sense. And it's really not. It simply was my ego identifying with this role. So at first I was like, if I lost Paste, if Paste didn't work out, then people would look down on me, people would think less of me, people would think I'm not able to make something successful. But over the next few days after hearing that, I kind of started to think about it more, because that didn't really sit well with me, that there was the identification with this role, and then if I lost it, I had these thoughts that would come to me of being thought of less. And through that, I kind of realized, no, look, this isn't me. This is something I'm passionate about doing. This is something I want to be doing, but it is not me. If this role was to go, that's okay. It just wasn't meant to be. And so that was my real first experience with identifying a role that my ego had attached to, and then being like, okay, no, this isn't quite right. I don't want it to be like this. So what I want you to do is think about, if you haven't already, think about a role that you identify with. And as I said, one of the easiest ways to think about this is, if this was taken away from you, would you feel worthless, or would you feel less worthy of love, or would you just feel like less of a person if this role was taken away from you? And if the answer is yes, then obviously you have identified with this role. And let me just clarify again, this role is not you. Your body is not you. The way I look at it is, you are a soul inside of this physical body, right? So you still have to look after your body. You know, you can't not look after your body. But it is simply a vessel. And if you are thinking on that same wavelength, nothing that really happens really matters, in the sense that once this body goes, you will still be there. The energy, the person, the soul that you are will still be there. Just your physical body won't. So when you start to think of these roles you identify with, you can start to have that detachment. Because attachment, as a lot of monks and Buddhists say, attachment leads to suffering. Because what is ours was simply given to us before. It was never ours before. It is now in our possession at the moment, and it will be someone else's later on. But it is never truly ours, right? That's the same thing for land. The concept of owning land. We're all just born into this world in various states and ways, and just because we get a piece of paper with a title saying that this land is ours, it's really not. We are part of this land, this whole earth. We are all just part of it. So if you look at it from that sense, once you've identified the roles that you're playing, you can kind of start to see where the harm can come from if you're really identifying with this role. So, as an example, say you're an athlete, and people always say, oh, you're such an amazing athlete, I want to be like you, you're so amazing, your hard work. And I think that's especially prevalent at the moment, because right now the Olympics are going on as I'm recording this. So if you were to put in all this hard work and you get to your race, to your event, whatever you're doing in the Olympics, and you have an injury, which means you can't ever compete like that again. If you were fully identified with this role, if your ego was fully identified with this role, that would be devastating. I wouldn't be surprised if some people, took their lives from that, because all they'd ever known had been this. What they thought was them was really this role that they were just playing into, the role of an athlete. But if you have that detachment from it, you realize that you are simply being, and at this point in time, you are being an athlete. If that is no longer able to be, something else will come along and be in its place. And that brings me on to, you can identify with something positive and something negative. So the ego just wants to attach to anything, right? Anything, and that can be positive or negative. And it just wants more and more. It can never be satisfied or satiated. So if that's an athlete, you're always striving to be the best. You always want to win. You always want the gold medals. If you're a parent, you always want to be the best parent. You want to compare yourself to others and be like, cool, I want to be the best parent I can for my child. And then it doesn't become about the child, it becomes about you in that role. But it can also be negative, as I was saying. So if you're someone that gets diagnosed with cancer or some some form of disease, you have an injury, you have a setback, you have a mental illness, and then you start to identify with that role. Oh, I'm a survivor of this role. I'm a survivor of this disease. But that's not who you are. That may have been, it may be you in this moment. You may have been able to move through that. But if you identify with that role, that's where the spiral really takes a hold of you. And then your ego clings on to people giving you support, empathy, showing you affection. Your story becomes not about who you truly are, but how you have handled this disease, this illness. Can you see what I'm trying to get at here? I'm not saying that you won't play a role in your life. We're all playing our roles now. We're all part of roles now. But they are not who we are. So you need to find those roles and understand that that is where it is right now. But if that was to change, we need to be okay with that. We need to detach from this role. We need to be aware of our ego attaching to these roles. And I'm going to do another video on egos specifically, because it's such an in-depth topic and it's something that I've struggled with a lot. But we just need to bring awareness. So the first step is to actually see what roles you're identifying with by asking yourself that question. If this was to go out of my life, would I feel less complete? Would I feel not whole? Would I feel, unworthy? And then that is bringing awareness to the situation. So every time you're in this role, you're playing this role, you can be aware of what you're thinking. Right? So when you're aware of what you're thinking in these roles, you can change your thinking on the fly, and then you're not consumed by ego. You are still you. The you that you are inside. And all these material things, all these physical things, even these mental things, they start to fade away because you understand that this isn't you. This is simply a role that you are identified with. And as soon as you bring that awareness to that, you're just going to notice a change within you. Well, I really hope this has been useful. I would love to hear your perspective, so if you can drop that in the comments below, either on the pace.com website, or if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, leave your comments below and share what roles that you have identified with and that now you're aware of, and maybe come back and post how you're going with it. Are you able to detach from this role and acknowledge that you're still doing it, but you know that that is not you? I would love to hear your stories. Alright, that's it for now. Thank you, Pace community. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.